Challenging, but at the same time, I look out towards support around us other than just having family. I think there's very little out there, and I do sometimes wonder how those that have disjointed families, be it geographical location or the fact that they may have some sort of reason for them not to be together, how somebody suffering from dementia would cope, because really it's a time when you will be required to do all you can to help and support and make that person better. So I just do hope that families are around to help each other through this awful, awkward time. The subject is somewhat taboo because there is this label attached to it where you say this person's gone mad. I think in the Western developed world, we're starting to understand that dementia is a much more serious problem and it's nothing to be embarrassed about. And from my own experiences, I remember I used to go to a restaurant and quite often there used to be a lady that would walk in and stand and look really confused. And I learnt later that she had dementia. That was my first ever exposure to somebody that had dementia. But during the early stages, I was somewhat confused and thinking, well, why is she not being cared for? Why is she not being loved for? And really couldn't understand why. But now that I've experienced it myself for the first time, I'm starting to understand a little bit more. Not knowing what sort of a day is ahead of us. In fact, sometimes not even knowing what sort of morning, afternoon or evening lies ahead of us, because we've seen changes in his mood, in his temperament, in his ability to want to communicate. So it is really quite difficult. Your agency, your event contacted us and I was able to take Father along. And I saw him on the one occasion where he seemed to mix in and he seemed to enjoy it. So I was blessed to see that. And that's about the only time I've been to an outside agency, outside external party, where I can say that that was beneficial. Is that within the Indian subculture, we're very, very reserved to be able to express love, where you can hug your father or hug your mother. That doesn't happen a lot. I know that because, I've got brothers and sisters and there's some reservation. I'd like to think I'm a little bit more different, so I've become very, very engaging with Father. So there's been many an occasion now when he's having his moment that I'll talk to him and I'll explain to him how proud we are of, as his children, of what he's achieved, what he's done, and then I will try and lead him into a conversation where he can then recite some of the stories, some of the challenges that he faced. And then when you're hugging him, when you're complimenting him, I've seen that his mood changes. So when we put the emphasis back on him and his achievements, he loves that. Loves that in the sense of it moves him away in his mood from a feeling of being vulnerable to then recognizing that he was this great person that we know he was. You have to be really strong-willed. So in my journey, I have gone through highs, and I mean extreme lows. Extreme lows from a point of view where this time last year, for 3 to 4 months, Father had banned me from visiting the house because he was going through some sort of transition where he felt that I was not welcome, that I had some other motives. And it's at that stage that he was put on some much stronger medication, which has since settled him down. So the tips that I have is to say that you will hear and you will see things from your loved father or mother that will be hurtful, but you have not to let it get to you. Now that takes some will, that takes a lot of deep energy, and I quite often, even to this day, sometimes come away and I feel drained. But I have learned to accept that that is just a mental condition. You will hear savage words, you will hear devastating comments from them, and we do. But you have to just let it go above your head. So that's the tip I would say to you. And if you are in a position where you have family or you have friends, you've got to be able to talk about it and learn to talk.
I really struggle with so many things. He can't eat. I don't know how he's surviving nearly a year. He eats very little amount of food. Sometimes he doesn't like to eat at all. So it makes me very sad. And also he got a problem going to the toilet several times. All these things, it is really unbearable to me. He lost his independency. He's dependent on somebody else. So sometimes I feel, what is the use of being like independent, like to have healthy food, like walking to keep himself healthy? There is no use. On the whole, he lost his peace of mind. Sometimes he says, why don't I die? Make me feel sad, like sometimes it make me feel to cry. Sometimes I don't know how long it will go like this. What shall I do if it goes more worst than this? So it helps me a lot physically, but mentally I don't know what can help me. Sometimes I talk myself, what shall I do? What shall I do? Why I am not feeling well? Why I am not feeling to talk to somebody else? Why I am reluctant to go out? And I don't know what it calls depression. Is this the depression? Sometimes I feel I cannot carry on anymore. But the next moment I feel I should try my best to give him peace, to give him comfort, to give him little sleep. So although I got a night carer to look after him, I spend a lot of time with him to make him sleep, to give him comfort, to give him peace. And this is the things I took challenge to give him at least physical peace. Talk to him about his past, about the present. Ask him several questions whether he can use his brain. Who got the dementia, gradually he lost to think about. So ask him some question what makes him to think. And this is the all you can do.
loss of his independence, because he's the guy who did everything, because he gave me everything, he did everything for me. I never knew the bills, he would bring the money home, he would pay the bills. So that I find the change in him quite difficult, and for me to take over that role. The most challenging thing for me is in the mornings, because it's, I think, a little bit difficult for him to get up early. If I let him sleep till about 9, I think that's fine. But about 8:30, 7:30, it's a little bit difficult to get dressed. He takes more time, and then he'll be sitting in a chair because I tell him, get yourself washed. But sometimes when I go, he's still in the chair reading a book or whatever. That's the challenge, Once he's washed, he takes a wash himself, he gets dressed by himself. After that, I find, things are much easier. So that is the most challenging thing for me. I find the mornings, early mornings, yeah. Sometimes I think if he's hungry, I'm a bit frightened, he will not. So I don't want to leave him on his own because he's a diabetic. So I find, so I have to be there, tell him what to do. But he is fine, once, he's had his food, everything, and going places, walking, because we do like, a half an hour's walk. Before, he was a little bit reluctant to walk, but now he enjoys it. And I find it's nice that, he on his own with a happy face, he walks, and then I know once you come back from the walk, he's alive, he's more, I don't know, he can remember things better, I know, it gives me a good feeling, once he's at the exercise, he is really good. A big shock for me, because when I went to the neurologist and when he said, I'm sorry to say, he is having this, and so it was rather a big shock, sadness, but at the same time, I thought, if my husband was okay, he would look after me, and so I have accepted it, and now it's okay. I think you have to have a lot of patience, I think a lot of compassion, and I think accept, because now I have accepted that my husband can't do the things that he used to do, and I think that has made things quite easy for me, because before it was, the first year or two was very difficult, because it was like getting emotional, anger, everything. But now I have come to terms that this is the life we lead, and that has made things really, I'm very comfortable with myself, and I'm really happy with my husband. I take him to exercise classes, and then I've joined the Touchstone cafe, which I think has made him a bit more, a bit more independent. Sort of, now I leave him in the exercise class on his own, and he does that 1 hour on his own, and I go and pick him up. So I want to give him more confidence, do things on his own, and he is coping okay. So if anyone can, keep going, helping them, I'm sure the results will be better.
You can say it is a disease, sort of like typhoid or anything. You don't call it disease, you call it typhoid. So this one is called as dementia.
Dementia to me is something that robs you of a person. And that's hard. But you just pull your socks up and you get on with it, really. And I think people need to actually think, you know what? There's some funny stuff about this, and you have to laugh some days, even if it's something that you probably shouldn't laugh about, but it is funny. So you've got to actually look at the positive of something that's not very nice at all, really. But you just get on with it.
Learn to have patience. That's the main thing.
But I think it's also okay to be frustrated. Because I think you start to, sometimes you can feel guilty, that you feel, not exactly bad, but sometimes you get annoyed at the person. Well, actually it's okay to get annoyed because it's just how you feel. And actually if you do get annoyed, most of the time they won't realise in half an hour that you were annoyed with them anyway. As a carer, you've got to tell yourself it's okay to sometimes lose the plot, and it's fine, it's not an issue. Because I think if you tell yourself that you have to keep staying strong and not let things out and keep it all in, it's not going to help. A lot of interaction, you need a lot of interaction. You need to have some stimulation there, whether it be even a silly conversation or an old conversation of trying to ask them stories from before. I can't do Sudoku, but my mum can do it. If we make her do it, she's, you know, sometimes she doesn't want to, but she will.
My problem is that she is always sleeping. Yeah, which is I have to wake her up, and she replies, "I'm awake."
I'm the mum now, if that makes sense. So the relationship changes slightly between me being the daughter and her mum, and I think that's the hard bit.
Struggle, it is a struggle, but because I'm used to help her right from the day we met, right? So I don't felt that much different. The only problem was that I couldn't stay at home in the beginning.
For me, going in and doing the caring side of things, a lot of it's come about just as they've got older, you do it anyway. But the harder part to that is that the encouragement of making sure that mum is still involved, because that is sometimes really hard to do. One, because maybe she doesn't want to do it. She may not feel like interacting on that day. Another is making sure she's safe to be involved with something that we might do, like cooking.
I have to care, or I want to care. That's the thing. So I can't leave her alone. Sometimes I feel a bit, you can say, dispirited. But then I again goes back to the life and carry on.
Some days when I'm there, I can leave at the end of being there all day. I can leave and think, that was good, that was fun, that was a good day. But then there's other days I'll come away and I'm quiet because I just think that was not so good a day. The emotional roller coaster is ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. Me personally, I would say yes. I mean, luckily, I suppose for mum and dad in that respect, they're both very good with their English. They understand it fully, but that's probably because they'll talk to me in Punjabi and I always speak to them back in English, which I suppose a lot of generations, it happens. But as to accessing things, I think, yes, there's definitely a block there. I mean, one of the things I would probably say is when we first started going to the memory clinic, Our nurse, memory clinic nurse, she was fabulous, wasn't she? She was really good. And but the thing was, when she did the memory tests, she actually learnt to try and understand the words and the things that Mum might say on the memory test. So she knew the words in Punjabi, so that if Mum could remember it in that language, that was fine. Because that's another thing. Just because she can't think of the word in English doesn't mean she doesn't know. And that's something I think people really need to realise. So it is making sure that they don't confuse the language barrier with not remembering. And that's something that it would be good to address, really.
We should talk to each other, everything. That helps
Definitely.
a lot. If you any problem or anything you want to say to other person, say it there itself.
When things are changing and sometimes you have thoughts in your mind, you need to be able to be very open about those and realise, you know what, you're allowed to think like this, it's not a problem. Whether it's good or bad, there's no right and wrong. You are allowed to be vocal about how you feel. And that is something that you need to do, because if you don't, you'll go stir crazy.